They said he was too young, too bold, too dangerous. But all he did was write a letter. Not to the West, not to the banks, but to his brothers, to his sisters. 54 letters, one call. Let Africa belong to Africans again. But silence answered him, and then threats followed. He did not ask for war, he asked for unity. Yet they feared his words more than his weapons. Why? Because his truth broke their chains of comfort. This is not a story about politics. This is about betrayal, about a letter that dared to dream, and a continent that must now decide who it will become. Subscribe, not just for this video, but for the dream of a free Africa. It began not with anger, but with ink. Not with bullets, but with hope. Captain Ibrahim Traore, the young lion of Burkina Faso, did something rare. He did not wait for permission. He did not wait for applause. He wrote a letter, 54 names, one message: let us gather. Let us build Africa, not as strangers, but as a family. He asked for no throne. He asked for no favor. He asked for unity and dignity. Let Africa belong to Africans again, he wrote. Simple words, but in those words was rebellion. Because behind the polite curtains of diplomacy lies a truth we all know. Africa is free on paper, but chained in debt, dependency, and silence. So Traore spoke, and silence replied. Some presidents never answered. Others whispered warnings. Some said he is not elected. He is not one of us. But the truth was clear. They feared what that letter revealed. It revealed who stood for the people and who stood in their way. The silence did not last. It turned into rejection, and rejection into betrayal. One by one the responses came, not with hope, but with distance, excuses, coldness. Some said he is not elected. Others whispered he is dangerous, radical, unstable. But was that the truth, or just fear dressed as diplomacy? Guy Paul Biya of Cameroon, over 4 decades in power, said nothing. He does not need to speak. His silence speaks French. Guy Obiang Nguema of Equatorial Guinea appointed his son as vice president while children beg in the dust. Why would he join a man like Traore? Unity demands accountability. Guy Mnangagwa of Zimbabwe, once seen as a revolutionary heir, now quiet as foreign bankers call the tune. Guy Alassane Ouattara of Côte d'Ivoire did not reply with words. He replied with accusation. He called Traore a threat to the region. But ask yourself, when did unity become dangerous? When did asking for independence become an act of war? Guy Felix Tshisekedi of Congo, his country bleeds cobalt and gold. Yet he stood with the West, not with his brother. From Nigeria to Uganda the same rhythm played. A song of excuses composed in foreign halls. They feared the summit, not because it would fail, but because it might succeed. But not every door stayed shut. Not every leader turned away. Some, just a few, stood up. Guy Paul Kagame of Rwanda was the first. A man known for his fierce stance on independence. He praised Traore's courage. He said, "The time has come to build without permission." Then came Guy João Lourenço of Angola. Once skeptical of populism, now moved by clarity. He did not see a radical, he saw a mirror. Guy Gideon Dumaboko of Botswana, quiet but firm. His reply was simple: let us talk, let us build. Guy John Mahama of Ghana. Though no longer in office, his voice shook the youth. He said, "Traore is not our enemy, the enemy is division." In Accra and Tamale, young people marched, carrying signs not of protest, but of awakening. And then came the people, from Namibia, from South Sudan, from Gambia. They rose, not with fists, but with voices, saying, "We are done begging, we are done watching, we are ready." Guy Debi Mohammed of Chad, Guy Kais Saied of Tunisia, Guy Salva Kiir of South Sudan. Even Niger's Amadou Abdramane stood up, despite the pressure. The fire was no longer just in letters, it was in footsteps, in whispers, in hope. If your leader received that letter, would they stand with Traore or stand with silence? Why would anyone fear unity? Why would peace be treated like a provocation? Because unity, real unity, is dangerous to those who profit from division. Many of those rejections were not written in African capitals. They were drafted in Paris, polished in Brussels, approved in Washington. You see, the system is not broken, it was built this way. A continent held hostage by debts, trapped by trade terms, silenced by aid. Guy Traore's letter was not a rebellion, it was an exposure. It revealed that independence was often only flag deep. Most of our logistics, energy, telecom owned abroad. Our food imported, though our soil is fertile. Burkina Faso has gold, but no gloves in its hospitals. Côte d'Ivoire's electricity comes from France. Even the light in our homes is colonized. That is why they feared him, because he named what they were too afraid to say. He saw through the illusion and called it by its name. It began with a letter, but it did not end there. That paper became a matchstick, and across villages, towns, and capitals it sparked a fire. They tried to isolate him, to call him a threat, to plan his removal. But what they did not expect was that people were listening. In Senegal, a mother whispered to her children, "This time someone speaks for us." In Tamale, young boys marched with bare feet, chanting Traore's name, not as a president, but as a mirror of hope. Because this was not about one man, it was about dignity. It was about hospitals without medicine while minerals fund mansions. It was about schools with no roofs in lands with diamond rivers. They tried to silence Traore, but they forgot you cannot kill a seed once it touches the soil. From Chad to Niger, leaders began to shift. Not because of politics, but because the people began to ask, who truly serves us? And when a nation asks that, the ground begins to shake. This was never just a letter, it was a mirror. And now the faces are clear. Some stood for the people, others stood in their way. Guy Traore did not bring war. He brought a question, and that question echoed in every village, every school without chalk, every hospital without light. Who truly serves us? The empire strikes quietly, with banks, with headlines, with shame. But this time Africa did not turn away. We listened, we felt it, and we remembered. We remembered Sankara, Lumumba, and Nkrumah. They tried to bury them, but they became seeds. Traore is not perfect. He is not saint nor savior, but in him we hear something rare in tension. He stands for those who were never invited to the table, the farmers, the mothers, the children born with debts, and now the world watches. But more importantly, Africa watches itself. Let us not wait for leaders. Let us become the leaders our ancestors prayed for. Comment New Africa if you believe the dream is not dead. Share this video, not for the algorithm, but for the awakening. It started with ink, not with anger, with a letter, not with a weapon, and yet what followed shook the foundations of a continent. Captain Ibrahim Traore did not wage war in the traditional sense. He did not send tanks or planes. He sent words, 54 messages of hope, one for each African head of state. His call was simple: let Africa belong to Africans again. But simplicity, when spoken with courage, can become dangerous to those who benefit from the silence. This is where the lesson begins. We often speak of betrayal as a sudden act, a knife in the back, a broken promise. But the deepest betrayal is quieter. It looks like a phone not answered, a letter ignored, a brother turning away. It is the betrayal of silence in the face of truth. And that is what Traore faced. He did not ask for applause. He did not demand loyalty. All he asked for was unity, not beneath a flag or a party, but beneath the banner of dignity. And yet the silence from his peers was deafening, not because they didn't hear him, but because they did. Because his words made them uncomfortable. Because his truth exposed their compromise. And that is the first lesson we must learn. The system is not broken, it was built this way. Built to reward obedience, not courage. Built to reward comfort, not confrontation. Built to keep the poor waiting, the youth distracted, and the powerful comfortably in control. Africa was told it was free. But when one man reminded the continent that freedom without control over food, land, medicine, and voice is just theater, he was met not with solidarity but with suspicion. Ask yourself, when did unity become a threat? When did dignity become radical? And when did dreaming become dangerous? The second lesson is this: truth is not welcomed in halls of comfort. Traore's letter was not rejected because it was wrong, but because it was right. It did not attack anyone. It asked questions, and that for many was too much. The old guard saw him not as a partner, but as a disruptor, because the system teaches them that change is risk, that stability, even if built on injustice, is better than discomfort. But stability for the few, built on silence of the many, is not peace. It is oppression dressed in diplomacy. Traore's courage wasn't just in what he said, it was in how he said it. Calm, respectful, with no insult, and yet they feared him more than rebels. Because he did not come with bombs, he came with truth. That is the third lesson. Real power is not in noise, it is in clarity. You see, when someone speaks clearly, the fog clears. And when the fog clears, you see things you wish you hadn't. Hospitals with no gloves while gold is exported. Schools without roofs while contracts are signed in Paris. Countries with fertile land importing rice. Generators humming while children sleep hungry. Traore pointed at the mirror. And for the first time in a long time, many leaders saw their own reflection, not as liberators, but as gatekeepers. But the most powerful part of this story is not the letter. It is the response. Not from the presidents, but from the people. Young people in Tamale and Accra marching barefoot. Mothers in Segal whispering to their children, "This time someone speaks for us." That is where hope lives, not in titles, but in awakening. Traore's letter became a matchstick. It lit fires not in offices, but in villages. Not in headlines, but in hearts. Because ultimately this is not about one man. Not about Burkina Faso. Not even about politics. It is about a question, the most dangerous question of all. Who truly serves us? That question shakes palaces more than protest. That question dismantles illusions faster than sanctions. And that is the fourth lesson. The moment people ask that question, the empire begins to crack. Traore's courage reminded us of something we had forgotten, that leadership does not require permission. That dignity is not something given by the West or granted by banks. It is something we are born with. Something our ancestors fought for. Something we are called to reclaim. He reminded us that we do not need to wait. Not for elections. Not for perfect leaders. Not for global permission. We need to become the leaders our ancestors prayed for. And that brings us to the final lesson. Africa's future does not lie in the hands of one leader, but in the courage of millions. Traore lit the match, but fire only spreads if others carry it. You reading this, watching this, sharing this, you are part of that fire. We must remember the names they tried to bury: Sankara, Lumumba, Nkrumah. They tried to silence them too. But seeds grow in silence, and now they bloom again, not in statues, but in questions and courage and movements. Traore is not a saint. He will make mistakes. But he has done something rare. He spoke when it was easier to stay quiet. He acted when the script said to wait. And that alone deserves attention, not blind praise, but respect. So now we must ask ourselves, when the next letter comes, will your leader open it? Will you stand with unity or with comfort? Will you side with courage or with convenience? This is no longer about Traore. This is about us. Let us not wait to be saved. Let us rise. Let us build. Not tomorrow. Now. But let's be honest, awakening is not easy. It comes with pain, with questions that make us uncomfortable, with truths that threaten everything we were taught to believe. Many of us were raised to think freedom came with the flag, that independence came with the Constitution, that democracy arrived when a suit stood behind a podium. But Traore's letter tore through that illusion. He reminded us you cannot be truly free if you are still afraid to speak. You cannot be independent if your food comes from ships, your money from loans, and your orders from abroad. You cannot call it sovereignty when your soil is rich, but your children are poor. This is not a new message, but it is a message we had stopped listening to, because we were tired, because we were told that change is impossible, because we feared standing alone. But now, the silence is breaking. In Chad, people are speaking. In Mali, people are walking. In Burkina Faso, they are building. The illusion is cracking and the truth is louder than ever. And here is a truth many leaders fear. The African people are waking up. They are not waiting for speeches. They are not waiting for promises. They are asking questions. They are remembering names. They are connecting the dots. And they are realizing, we have always had the power. We were just told to forget it. That is the true revolution, not with guns, but with memory. Not with rage, but with clarity. And once a people remember who they are, no empire can contain them. The West will respond. They already have, with headlines, with economic threats, with phrases like destabilization, radicalism, and undemocratic. But let us ask who wrote the dictionary. Who decided what is radical? Who defined stability and for whom? Was it stable when millions were enslaved? Was it peaceful when borders were drawn in Europe, not in Africa? Was it democratic when foreign powers hand-pick leaders and fund silence? We must stop measuring ourselves by their words. We must write our own vocabulary, where unity is not dangerous but divine, where truth is not punished but honored, where leaders are not rulers but servants, and where Africa is not a project to fix but a home to love. This is not romanticism, this is realism. Because no one will respect a people who do not respect themselves. No one will listen to a continent that refuses to listen to its own children. So yes, this is about Traore. But it is also about you, about me, about all of us. We are the generation with the tools to build something new. Not just hashtags and headlines, but homes and schools and futures. We are the generation with the courage to say enough. Enough borrowed dreams. Enough silent suffering. Enough pretending that dignity must come with permission. We don't need more billion-dollar summits. We need clean water in villages. We need doctors in clinics. We need classrooms with chalk, not aid with conditions. And most of all, we need each other. Because a continent that is united in vision cannot be defeated by division. So what now? Now we speak. Now we organize. Now we remember. We remember the letter. We remember the silence. We remember the few who stood up. And we make a promise. That silence will not win again. Let the world hear us not as victims, but as visionaries. Let the future find us not begging for change, but building it with our hands. Let our children say years from now, they were the ones who remembered. They were the ones who stood. They were the ones who lit the fire. Not for a man, not for a party, but for a people, for a land, for a continent that finally chose itself. So if you still believe, if you feel the fire rising, say it with me and say it loudly. New Africa, because the dream is not dead. It is only just beginning. But let's be honest, awakening is not easy. It comes with pain, with questions that make us uncomfortable, with truths that threaten everything we were taught to believe. Many of us were raised to think freedom came with the flag. That independence came with the Constitution. That democracy arrived when a suit stood behind a podium. But Traore's letter tore through that illusion. He reminded us you cannot be truly free if you are still afraid to speak. You cannot be independent if your food comes from ships, your money from loans, and your orders from abroad. You cannot call it sovereignty when your soil is rich but your children are poor. This is not a new message. But it is a message we had stopped listening to, because we were tired, because we were told that change is impossible, because we feared standing alone. But now, the silence is breaking. In Chad, people are speaking. In Mali, people are walking. In Burkina Faso, they are building. The illusion is cracking and the truth is louder than ever. And here is a truth many leaders fear. The African people are waking up. They are not waiting for speeches. They are not waiting for promises. They are asking questions. They are remembering names. They are connecting the dots. And they are realizing, we have always had the power. We were just told to forget it. That is the true revolution, not with guns, but with memory. Not with rage, but with clarity. And once a people remember who they are, no empire can contain them. The West will respond. They already have, with headlines, with economic threats, with phrases like destabilization, radicalism, and undemocratic. But let us ask who wrote the dictionary. Who decided what is radical? Who defines stability and for whom? Was it stable when millions were enslaved? Was it peaceful when borders were drawn in Europe, not in Africa? Was it democratic when foreign powers hand-pick leaders and fund silence? We must stop measuring ourselves by their words. We must write our own vocabulary, where unity is not dangerous but divine, where truth is not punished but honored, where leaders are not rulers but servants, and where Africa is not a project to fix but a home to love. This is not romanticism, this is realism, because no one will respect a people who do not respect themselves. No one will listen to a continent that refuses to listen to its own children. So yes, this is about Traore, but it is also about you, about me, about all of us. We are the generation with the tools to build something new, not just hashtags and headlines, but homes and schools and futures. We are the generation with the courage to say enough. enough borrowed dreams, enough silent suffering, enough pretending that dignity must come with permission. We don't need more billion-dollar summits. We need clean water in villages. We need doctors in clinics. We need classrooms with chalk, not aid with conditions. And most of all, we need each other. Because a continent that is united in vision cannot be defeated by division. So what now? Now we speak. Now we organize. Now we remember. We remember the letter. We remember the silence. We remember the few who stood up. And we make a promise that silence will not win again. Let the world hear us not as victims but as visionaries. Let the future find us not begging for change, but building it with our hands. Let our children say years from now, they were the ones who remembered. They were the ones who stood. They were the ones who lit the fire. Not for a man, not for a party, but for a people, for a land, for a continent that finally chose itself. So if you still believe, if you feel the fire rising, say it with me and say it loudly. New Africa, because the dream is not dead. It is only just beginning, but readiness alone is not enough. For too long, Africa has been ready but denied. Ready to feed itself yet forced to import. Ready to govern itself yet shackled by foreign advisors. Ready to stand tall yet told to kneel for the sake of stability. The world fears a united Africa not because it is violent, but because it is possible. Because unity threatens an entire industry, the industry of division. They profit when we fight. They benefit when we doubt each other. They grow stronger every time we look outward for solutions born from within. But Traore's letter, that simple act of reaching across borders, shattered this game. He reminded us that we are not strangers to each other. We are family divided by design. He reminded us that our borders were never ours. They were written in Berlin, not in Banjul, in Paris, not in Praia, in London, not in Lusaka. And what was written can be rewritten, but not with anger, with vision, with unity, with trust. That trust will not come overnight. Many still doubt. Many still fear betrayal. And who can blame them? They have seen promises broken. They have seen leaders change faces, not values. They have seen revolutions hijacked, bought, or buried. But this moment, this one feels different. Not because it is loud, but because it is honest. Because it is rising from below, not dictated from above. Because it is not about one man, one party, one military, or one region. It is about all of us, from the mother in Dakar to the farmer in Kidal, from the student in Addis Ababa to the mechanic in Kampala. It is about those who have been ignored, patronized, and silenced. And now they are speaking. And if we listen, truly listen, we will hear the same word echoing across the continent. Enough. Enough of aid that enslaves. Enough of treaties that betray. Enough of elections that do not reflect. Enough of leaders who kneel for power, but do not stand for the people. And enough of being told that our pain must be polite. We are not children. We are not charity. We are not chaos waiting to happen. We are creators. We are builders. We are keepers of one of the richest, most wounded, and most sacred lands on earth. And the world owes us more than pity. It owes us space. It owes us dignity. But even if the world does not give it, we must take it not with violence, but with value, with clarity, with community, with conviction. And we must protect what we build. Because make no mistake, the pushback will come. Not with tanks, but with think tanks. Not with bombs, but with narratives. They will say we are disorganized. They will call us unstable. They will highlight every flaw, every misstep, every disagreement, and call it proof of failure. But let us ask them this. What nation was built perfectly? Did America rise without civil war? Did Europe unite without centuries of bloodshed? Did democracy bloom in one generation? No. They stumbled, they betrayed, they failed. But they kept building. So must we. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Because no one else will do it for us. And we owe it to the next generation not to hand them more flags, but to hand them freedom with roots. Freedom that grows food. Freedom that heals wounds. Freedom that knows its own name. And most importantly, freedom that does not ask to be validated by former masters. Let us be clear, this is not anti-West. This is pro-truth, pro-accountability, pro-dignity. Because we do not hate those who once ruled us. We simply refuse to let them keep writing our future. We do not fear the West's success. We fear forgetting our own potential. And now we reclaim it not with slogans, but with systems. With schools that teach more than colonizer history. With hospitals that treat more than symptoms. With banks that serve people, not foreign shareholders. with media that speaks our languages and our truth. Because no matter how loud their headlines scream, we know the story beneath the surface. We know that this continent is not rising, it has always been rising. It was just covered, distorted, interrupted. But now the interruption ends, and a new era begins. An era that will not be televised, it will be lived. In farms, in classrooms, in neighborhoods where light finally reaches the walls. In cities where traffic moves not just cars but dreams. In capitals where the people are not just heard but obeyed. This is the Africa we are building, an Africa that listens to itself, that protects itself, that feeds itself, that defines itself. And it all began with a letter, but more importantly with a decision, the decision to choose ourselves, the decision to risk being misunderstood for the chance to be free, the decision to walk away from comfort in search of truth. That decision is now ours to make every day, in our homes, in our families, in our governments, and in our hearts. So when they ask you, what happened in 2025? You tell them, we woke up, we remembered, we stood up, we chose ourselves. And from that moment forward, nothing and no one could stop us again, because Africa finally heard its own voice. And this time, it did not whisper, it roared. But a roar must become more than a sound. It must become structure. It must become law. It must become protection, not just from outside forces, but from within. Because not all enemies wear foreign uniforms. Some wear familiar faces. Some sign deals behind closed doors. Some wave flags they do not believe in. And some will chant our slogans only to sell us later. This is the next chapter of our awakening discernment. To love Africa is not to defend all who claim to represent it. To love Africa is to demand more, not just from the world, but from ourselves. We must ask hard questions. Are our leaders serving or performing? Are our institutions healing or hiding? Are our schools liberating or repeating the same colonial scripts? Are we teaching our children to think or to obey? Because true independence is not only about land, it is about the mind, the spirit, the imagination. A free people do not just survive, they create. And the war against Africa has always been a war against her imagination, a war against her right to dream, to invent, to define beauty on her own terms. We were told that success looks like Paris, that justice sounds like English, that development smells like oil. But what if success smells like shea butter and cocoa and black soil? What if justice sounds like Yoruba Wolof More Lingala? What if development is not skyscrapers, but a mother who does not have to bury her child for lack of clean water? What if modernity is not mimicry but mastery of our own path? This is what Traore's letter was truly asking. What if we stopped apologizing for existing? What if we stopped begging for validation? What if we stopped trying to fit into a world never built for us and started building our own? You see, power does not hate us because we are broken. It fears us because we are whole. Because even after centuries of invasion, enslavement, betrayal, and theft, we are still here, still standing, still singing, still sowing, still rising. Africa is not a miracle. Africa is a mirror, one that reflects the best and worst of human history. And now it is time to choose which face we will show the future. Because the world is watching, and not just the oppressors. The oppressed of the world are watching too. From the favelas of Brazil to the refugee camps in Palestine. From the mines of Bolivia to the reservations of North America. They are watching because they too know what it means to be spoken over, priced, ignored, erased. And when they see Africa rise, they rise with her. Because we were never alone in this struggle. Colonialism was not just a theft of land, it was a strategy to divide the colonized. But we are reconnecting. And as we reconnect, a new language emerges, one of solidarity, not charity. Of truth, not pity. Let the West say what it wants. Let their newspapers scream. Let their think tanks panic. We will not reply with hate. We will reply with harvest. We will reply with hospitals. We will reply with books in our languages, clean water in our villages, jobs that do not kill the soul. We will reply with order, but not the order of the gun. The order of justice. The order of memory. The order of love rooted in truth. And yes, spiritual renewal. Because no revolution lasts without soul. It is not enough to rise economically. We must rise morally. We must restore the spirit that was crushed when they renamed our rivers, rewrote our gods, and mocked our skin. That is why this is not just political. It is spiritual. It is a return to something deeper than GDP and borders. It is a return to a promise that we were created with purpose, that we are more than resources to be managed, that we are more than votes to be manipulated, that we are children of soil, sun, and story. And in that story we are not victims. We are ancestors in the making, so we must ask ourselves, what will they say about us 100 years from now? Will they say we were too afraid to risk, too polite to speak, too loyal to systems that never loved us? Or will they say, this was the generation that turned mourning into movement. This was the generation that refused to die quietly. This was the generation that built with bruised hands and unbroken will. Let it be said that we did not wait for Europe to collapse. We simply stopped kneeling to it. Let it be known that we did not hate the West. We just stopped waiting for it to free us. Let it be remembered that we chose something better than revenge. We chose rebirth, not for vengeance, for our children. Because we are tired not just of being poor, but of being lied to, of being told to be patient while our elders die in lines for medicine, of being told to wait while our youth drown in the sea chasing illusion, of being told to hope while the hope is auctioned to the highest bidder. And now that hope belongs to us again, to the people, to the farmers, to the workers, to the women who carry more than they should, and the men who have nothing left to offer, but still show up, to the artists who refuse to forget, to the students who are tired of studying the history of their own humiliation, to the leaders who would rather serve than shine. This is your moment, and no matter how long they ignore it, history will remember it. Because it was written not in ink alone, but in footsteps, in uprisings, in whispers that became words, in letters that became laws, in fires that became families, and in a roar that finally said, we are no longer asking, we are becoming. Becoming is not easy. It means letting go of shame, of silence, of the stories we were taught to believe about ourselves, that we were late, less lost, that we were a burden waiting to be saved, that we were nothing without aid, without permission, without validation. But Africa has never been waiting. Africa has been working. Africa has been breathing beneath the weight of systems designed to suffocate her. She has been patient, yes, but not passive. Every child born into poverty yet rich in spirit is a protest. Every grandmother raising generations alone is a leader. Every teacher writing on broken chalkboards still dreaming of a future is a revolutionary. They didn't wait for someone to crown them, they led anyway. And now it is our turn. Our turn to break the cycle. Our turn to ask new questions. Our turn to reject the quiet death of compromise. Because the empire does not fall in a day, it cracks. Slowly, quietly, then suddenly. And those cracks are here. In the refusal of young people to emigrate just to matter. In the refusal of farmers to sell soil they don't own. In the refusal of nations to trade freedom for funding. In the refusal to forget. Because memory is a weapon, not to kill but to reclaim. And so we remember those who gave everything and were called rebels. We remember those who were erased because their voices were too true. We remember those who said no, not out of hate but out of hope. And most of all, we remember who we are. Not what they told us we are, but who we have always been. Builders, guardians, mothers of humanity, fathers of mathematics, keepers of land that fed civilizations before maps existed. We do not need to rise, we need to return. Return to self. Return to principle. Return to truth. This is the final lesson. The revolution is not coming. It is already here. It is in the rice fields of Senegal, in the desert crafts of Niger, in the melodies of Congo, in the drums of Zimbabwe, in the courage of Mali, in the resolve of Chad, in the silence of those who have lost everything yet still believe. It is in the eyes of those who say, we may not win today, but we will not lose ourselves. And that more than anything is what they fear. They do not fear our weapons, they fear our clarity. Clarity that we deserve better. Clarity that we are enough. Clarity that Africa is not a question, it is the answer. The answer to a world suffocating in greed, forgetting the land that birthed it. The answer to a world burning from extraction while ignoring the wisdom of indigenous balance. The answer to a future not yet written but now no longer postponed. So let it be written that a young captain who did not wait to be crowned wrote a letter, and that letter became a mirror, and that mirror became a movement, and that movement became a generation that chose to speak, to rise, to build together. No more borrowed voices, no more apologizing for dreaming, No more negotiating our worth. No more waiting for justice to be delivered by those who profit from delay. We do not need permission to be free. We do not need permission to unite. We do not need permission to heal. We only need to remember. And now that we remember, we begin, not with riots, but with relationships, not with anger alone, but with purpose, not with perfect leaders, but with principled communities. Let our flags mean more than color. Let our borders become bridges. Let our pain become policy. Let our sorrow become song. And let our silence finally become sound. So if you are listening, if you are breathing, if your heart is burning but your hope is tired, this is for you. You were not born to be ruled. You were not born to be forgotten. You were not born to wait. You were born to rise. And this is your time. Write your letter. Find your village. Light your fire. Because the revolution is not a day. It is a decision. And we just made it. New Africa. We are no longer waiting. We are becoming. Together,